Following last week's shootout loss, Habs coach Michel Therrien called out both Lars Eller and Jiri Sekac. On this week's Four Down segment, we ask, will this light a fire for his young players, or will it burn bridges for him in the locker room? As always, we invite you to join us on our social networks at facebook.com/RBTL Sports. We welcome to the show two of the biggest misfits in the city. We got cousin Vinny, Sean McMahon from the Beat 92.5. Thanks for taking the time, guys.
Pleasure to be here.
Who's a better looking between you two?
That's Sean. Right
there it is. That's what I'm talking about. To my left, RBTL contributor Anthony Cornelli. Thanks for taking the time.
Always.
That was a huge decision by Michel Therrien, guys, not letting them shoot in the shootout. Were you surprised by that?
I think a lot of people were surprised that he went with defensemen to shoot first, right? That was shocking. But I think sometimes you got to send a message as a coach. And Therrien hasn't done that too often. He doesn't publicly send messages. He hasn't done it anyway in recent memory. So I think sometimes a guy like Lars Eller, he's got to pick it up, man. He's got, what, one goal in the new year, I think?
Yeah, I think it was a bold move by the coach to be able to pull that because I don't know in the playoffs not playing your guys because of that very reason. I don't know if I would have went with that, but I think it's a strong statement. I think it's a statement that says, hey, like if you guys are not going to be able to step up to the plate, this is what's going to happen. I thought it was a bold move by Michel Therrien.
I think Michel Therrien picks up too much. Like everything's on his plate. The coaches, they go home at night. They're in their offices. They're going through all their training sessions. They're getting divorced because their life is hockey. These guys are on Saint Laurent, skiing the slopes every night. Sometimes they got to pay the price for it.
But hold on. But at the same time, you've got to control the locker room as well, right? You have to create an environment that guys are going to be held liable. You have to have an environment that at the same time you hold the locker room together. This could have maybe split the locker room. I mean, he rolled the dice on this.
I think we're making a little bit too much of the fact that he might lose the room on this one, especially because it's a couple of young guys. If anybody knows anything about Michel Therrien, especially in this second go-around with the Canadians, he's a guy who supports his veterans. Seeing Markov on a shootout, that move doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's got a little bit of history there. He's been successful in the past. Calling out a couple of youngsters, you know, it's something Michel's done in the past as well. And for a couple of guys who've been struggling to put the puck in the net, you know, maybe he wants that comment back after the game, calling him out a little bit.
But the last thing that you need as a young player, right, is additional pressure.
Well, you don't want to point it out to
right.
guys.
So what does that create to the guy who says, hey, I've had one goal in the last 9 games, and here I am. Well, now I'm starting to panic. Now I'm overthinking. Now I'm overplaying the puck. Now I'm overskating. Now I'm overchecking. And all of a sudden, you've got a guy who's not producing and paying the price for it.
The average person goes to work in a factory for $9 an hour. These guys are playing the game they love and making millions. Therrien is doing his job. Coaches cannot always be the bad guy.
So you would do the same in soccer? You would do with regards to you guys?
Absolutely.
The guys are not...
Absolutely. I got to call out the guys. They're big enough. They're adults. They're in the NHL. They're going up against 6'8" guys.
But there are some guys who will not take that lightly. There's some guys who don't respond well to it, right?
Look, when you're brought in to score goals and you're not scoring, it's only a matter of time before that's going to happen. And let's be honest, Therrien is an intimidating guy, isn't he? If you were playing for him, if you're a young guy in the league,
if his press conferences are any indication, I mean,
I'd be scared if I'm Lars Eller right now.
Canadians are on a 9-game winning streak, and Therrien looks like his mom just died. You know, so it's like I would be scared.
But truth be told, when it comes to Lars Eller, I mean, if we think back a little bit, he was benched, came back, and was a better Lars Eller. If anybody's going to benefit from a bit of a kick in the butt, it's going to be a guy like Lars Eller. And Sekac is a rookie. He's a little bit older, granted, but he's a rookie. Given a young guy a little bit of extra motivation, you don't like to see them using the media. To be honest, I think if Michel had a chance to take that comment back, he probably would want to take it back. It's not his style, but if you're passionate about your team, you're going to say things sometimes in the heat of the moment. I've been in that room at the Bell Center. Sometimes things are said and you go, I can't believe he said that. But in the locker room, guys like Pacioretty, the calming presence of a guy like Carey Price, I don't think there's any danger in that room. Brian Wilde from CTV, I heard him mention the other day, this is the most resilient, confident group of players he's seen in a really long time.
And if I'm not mistaken, the youngest core in the National Hockey League because of injuries
there
as
you
well.
Go.
So stay right there, gentlemen. After the break, I want to switch gears. I want to talk about the big man, Zdeno Chara. You don't want to miss it. All that and more happening right here on Reid Between the Lines. Stay with us.
Reid Between the Lines is brought to you by enconfiance.ca. Find your dream home.
Despite his striking resemblance to the villain in the cult classic The Goonies, there is no debating that Zdeno Chara's hockey skills outshine his looks. On this week's Four Downs, we're asking, is he even tradable? We welcome back cousin Vinny, Sean McMahon, Anthony Cornelli. Great to see you guys. Talk about a big man. He's one of the greatest shutdown defensemen this game has seen in a long time, but is he even tradable?
I think absolutely. I mean, there's still a lot of value for him, and I think it's on the trade market. At this point, I don't know if I'll make fans, in the Bruins community, but they're probably not going to win the Stanley Cup this year.
No. Yeah.
So safe to say that if they're going to continue to rebuild, and I think they are at the start of a rebuilding phase, they're probably better served, if they can, to deal a guy like Zdeno Chara, who the closer he gets to 40, he's not as valuable to
But
them.
I don't think it's a panic time just yet.
I think it's getting
he
close.
can bring a lot to the table. I think you're right. I think they're still looking at the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
They are seated 8th in the East. They still have a shot at the playoffs. If they were maybe in 10th, 11th, 12th, then maybe it's time to press the panic button. But he can still bring a lot to this team.
I have to disagree, guys. I have to disagree. I mean, at $7 million on cap, I don't think he's a luxury the teams can afford right now. Even if you're a contender going into the Stanley Cup playoffs, nobody's looking at a 6'9", beat up veteran who's missed 19 games.
Right, but yet a runner-up for the Norris Trophy last year.
Guys.
So he's not far away from that either.
I think he's still trade bait, though. No. I mean, there's got to be somebody out there who wants him. And let's be honest, he's been with Boston, what, almost 10 years? Almost 10 years?
2006, I believe.
Won the Cup. He got a Norris Trophy. I mean, what more can he bring to the table?
His body's just too big. With all the injuries he had to deal with in the last few years, he's taken a beating. You don't recuperate fast from that at 38 years old.
Yet, if you poll NHL players, which they did recently, and ask who do you hate playing against and who's the most difficult, intimidating presence on the ice, Zdeno Chara's at the top of the list. Guys don't like playing Zdeno Chara. They don't like playing
Guys
against
are just as big and if not faster than he is. His game is old school hockey, and that's not the game anymore.
Name me one defenseman in your eyes that'd be a bigger shutdown defenseman than Zdeno Chara right now.
Weber.
Not as much of a physical presence as Zdeno Chara.
Just picture this guy in a Habs uniform right now. Think about it.
It's a big uniform.
On the power play, it's a big uniform.
Biggest one we've ever seen.
You put him in front of the net or just for a shot. And no, he's not a 1-2 guy anymore, let's be honest. He's more of a 3-4. I think he can fill a role in another
But that's
team
to your
for
point
sure.
as well. At that price, he can't really be a number 3 or a number 4. He's got to be in your top 2. But if you're in Bruins front office, you have to think not necessarily short term, but long term, and they need to start banking assets. And the guy who's going to get you the assets right now is a guy potentially like Zdeno Chara, because I don't think that Tuukka Rask is going anywhere.
But there's bigger holes to void, because you look at Milan Lucic at $6 million. He's a bigger issue than Zdeno Chara right now. He's not producing to his guy. I mean, there are a lot more issues with the Boston Bruins just with Zdeno Chara. The question is, he's got $7 million cap hit. Last year of his contract, however, is $4 million. So you quote unquote get some sort of deal if he does put this up in terms of consistency over the next couple of years. But the idea behind Zdeno Chara is, can he bring something to a team that's in dire need of a defensive core?
Absolutely
and
not.
the question is, yes.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Really?
For sure.
He's got 4 goals in 40 games. He's missed the last 19 games before the All-Star break. How is he going to go into the stretch?
It is his lowest output.
How is he going to go into the stretch? His plus-minus was a huge thing in his career. He's 0 right now. Plus-minus is 0. How is he going to go into the stretch? And if he does get traded to a contender, what is he going to add?
But you make it sound like he's 3-4 years off playing in great form. He was the runner-up last year. I mentioned it before.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Last year.
Fine. But
what have you done for me lately?
What have you done for you? Okay, all right.
Size, grit, shot, any team can benefit from it.
And even at his
For
age,
sure.
he's still logging big minutes. I mean, he's still
Absolutely.
pulling in 24, 25, 26 minutes. It might not be 30,
Yeah, he's
31 like
averaging
he used to
23
be.
this year, yeah.
So he can still put in the minutes. And I don't know if there's a single team out there that if you offered the right package for a guy like Zdeno Chara, they would say no. Why would you say no to that? Especially if you're planning on going deep into the playoffs. That's exactly who you want sitting on the bench.
And that's why I don't think it's time for panic for the Boston Bruins either. Like I said, they still got a chance at the playoff run, so we'll see what happens. Stay with us. We're continuing on. We're switching gears. We're going to our pretender or contender segment. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Reid Between the Lines is brought to you by EliteSportsTours.ca. What are you doing this weekend?
Hi, I'm Anthony Stevenson. You're watching Reid Between the Lines.
With the recent announcement that Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao will finally meet in the ring on May 2nd, on this week's Pretender Contender, we ask, is this a life jacket needed to save boxing, or is it too little, too late? We welcome back Cousin Vinny, Sean McMahon, Anthony Cornelli, $250 million super fight. If there's anything that's labeled a super fight, it's this one. Is this what boxing needs?
I think it's a pretender. For a non-boxing fan, I remember growing up to the big cards, the big pay-per-views, the Tyson Holyfields, the Lennox Lewis fights. And for me, being an outsider, if I don't get the heavyweights, the big heavyweights back into the sport, most people say that the best, most entertaining fights are the small guys. They go at it. But for me, I'm not interested. So regardless if this is the fight of the century, I'm not interested. I don't think it's bringing boxing back.
Do you think that boxing needs an American heavyweight champion? Because that usually plays a lot with regards to boxing. They need someone to be able to ploy and be able to push it forward.
For me, it doesn't really matter where you're from. As long as you're eccentric and you're bringing, like Mike, I love Mike Tyson. He might not have been the greatest fighter of all time, but he was a big knockout puncher. He brought the fans to the sport.
I disagree with you. I think this fight is a contender to bring eyeballs to the sport. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring as much exposure as you can to a sport that's in dire need of eyeballs, right? To get people back onto the bandwagon, as they say. And what better than a super fight? We haven't had, and that's been one of the things that really knocks boxing for a long time. the guys are not facing each other at the best moments, right? In MMA, you've got the number one contender versus the champion at all times. In boxing, you don't see that. So I definitely think they're a contender to bring some eyeballs back and maybe save, or at least give it a shot.
Well, I agree. It's the anticipation too, right? They've never fought each other, so it's years and years in the making. These guys got to do it now because they're both pushing 40.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
And even so, you could even argue it's 5 years too late, 4 or 5 years too late.
True.
Well.
I know there was an opportunity; it never happened.
Right.
But I think it's good for the sport for sure. Absolutely.
See, I look at this as a casual boxing fan, and this is why I think this is a complete contender, because as an outsider, this is exactly what brings me to boxing. I want to see the two big names, and even if it is a little bit late, and granted, I think it is, but it's still what's going to bring me, and clearly the ticket sales are fine. I think they sold out at MGM in, what was it, 15 minutes?
Yeah. $615 a night.
And it'll be $100 on pay-per-view if you want the HD. So the numbers will be there. It's going to be an absolute juggernaut. And that's exactly what the sport needs. It's all eyeballs on this one event.
This has pretender still written all over for me. I mean, 5 years ago, like you said, this fight might be 5 years too late. Mayweather was gliding across that ring. Pacquiao was throwing punches, lightning speed. Right now, you have somebody that Mayweather hasn't stopped anybody legitimately since like Ricky Hatton in 2007. You know, and Manny Pacquiao that's trying to like record records and sing in his country. So like how are these guys going to be ready for the fight? I think everything around the fight is leading up to this huge card.
But you can't deny
in the ring.
But you can't deny the fact that whether it's the undercard, the co-main event, the fact of the promotion, the build up, the hype, the stories leading into it, them following Floyd, them following Manny. There's no denying the fact that this is definitely going to get people interested.
It's a show.
The question is, and that's where I'm sort of on the fence with pretender or contender, is it enough to sustain them for a long time? And that I think is going to matter in terms of the undercard and what quality boxing you're going to be able to showcase. Would you not agree?
I think whenever you put two big names against each other in any sport, it's going to draw attention, right? If there was a way to put Crosby and Ovechkin against each other one-on-one, right?
They should have done that in the All-Star game.
I'm telling you, right?
You see, somehow we brought it back to hockey.
You can't play one-on-one shinny in the All-Star game.
You know, when Federer plays Nadal, it happens in any sport. This is for sure people are going to be
This
all
is Hulk
over.
Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, WrestleMania all over again.
No, you can't compete. Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior takes the cake, my friend.
I think you might be right.
There's also a lot of, in terms of the pundits, there also has to be a lot of hype, but the product also has to deliver as well. And that's one of the things that's a little bit worrisome, because if it doesn't, I mean, it's hit or miss right now. Because if this product doesn't hit, and it's not one of the greatest fights of all time, because we know the hype is there, we know the promotion's there, but
does it come down to converting the casual boxing fan? I think if you can convert some people who weren't necessarily into it, if this is the first time that they look at this event, they say, wow, what have I been missing this entire time? Well, then I think boxing comes out a winner.
I'm honestly looking forward to see who Mayweather walks out with. That's all I'm looking forward to.
Let's hope it's not Justin Bieber. Stay right there. We're moving on to our Pretender Contender segment. You don't want to miss it. All that and more happening right here on Reid Between the Lines.
Reid Between the Lines is brought to you by Tilmar.ca. Innovative designs in the ceramic industry.
Hey Montreal, hey sports fans, I'm Tony Marinero, and you're watching Reid Between the Lines with Adam Reid.
The difference between a cigarette vending machine and the Toronto Maple Leafs is that the cigarette vending machine has players. On this week's Pretender Contender, we ask, is Toronto the hardest place to play in the National Hockey League? We welcome back Cousin Vinny, Sean McMahon, Anthony Cornelli. If you've lived in Toronto, which we have, you would know the media is pretty damn tough on their team, as they are in Montreal. Pretender or contender, Toronto being the hardest place to play. Anthony, start with you.
I think it's a pretender.
Really?
I think it's a pretender. Toronto is definitely not the hardest place to play.
No, there's no way.
Especially
Montreal, hands down, there is no way that the pressure is more intense in Toronto than it is in
Especially
Montreal.
with the rise of the North and the Raptors doing really well, the ACC's become a business center. People take clients, it's all corporate lodges, no one's actually a fan. And the fact that the season ticket holders are the number one in the league and the price of tickets are number one doesn't mean that it's the mecca of hockey in North America. Montreal is the hardest place to play hockey because we have nothing else. No one cares about the Impact, no one cares about the Alouettes unless they're winning. I care about the Expos, but unfortunately no one else did. And the Montreal Canadiens is the only thing that happens.
I believe it's a pretender too. Would we be talking about this if the Leafs were good this year? Would we be talking about it?
Well, I wouldn't be, no, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they were still critiquing the team, even if Toronto was doing well. That's the one thing about Montreal and Toronto. Montreal, if the team does well, they do relax a little bit. They do take a little bit of slack off the team. In Toronto, you still have that criticism. You still have the guys going ahead and going after that team. It's a tough market.
But now with the fans throwing jerseys on the ice, right? It's not looking very good for them, right?
Send us to jail.
You know what I mean?
For throwing your jersey.
But Montreal's doing well now, so people tend to just back off a bit. But I think if they were doing a lot better.
I think people also forget a little bit too how hard it was to play in Montreal during those 90s, the Oleg Petrov days, right?
Oh.
Yeah, you see?
The Smurf
That's reaction I was looking for.
The Smurf line.
I was a fan of Oleg Petrov. I don't know.
I like Oleg Petrov too.
Number 6, he was
Do you know
small.
Jake?
He was a
you know, Jake?
Love Jake.
Pretender or contender?
Contender. I think Toronto is hands down the toughest place in the NHL to play.
Agreed.
100%. I mean, and it's not just media scrutiny. I think that we tend to be a little bit short-sighted on this and throw it on the media's shoulders a lot. It's not just the media. It's because the team has been mired in futility for decades that it is impossible. Plus, you throw in situations like taxes, which afflict every Canadian team, and also climate.
Yeah.
Media, you've got the media problem, you've got the climate problem, and you've got the fact they're absolutely terrible.
And don't
Who wants to play there?
And don't forget management as well, right? With MLSC being involved, it almost feels like if there's any sport organization where upper management has a say of what's happening on the ice, it's MLSC. It almost feels as if decision-making, that's why Brendan Shanahan is stuck in such a tough position right now, because it's sort of squeezed from the top, squeezed from the bottom in terms of players and the fans. But you look at the media attention that Toronto puts on this team, I mean, they follow this is a huge market. The reason why Habs fans don't like Leafs fans is because they're equally as passionate about their team as we are. And there's no denying it. But do you think that maybe there's such a big difference between Toronto and Montreal because of the fact that Montreal has a winning product now?
Absolutely.
And
the Toronto, for me, will always be a pretender in this debate, because a boy from Lac Saint-Jean who's skating day in and day out on that pond, a French-Canadian kid, dreams of playing for the Montreal Canadiens. And they don't want to come play here anymore. Vinny Lecavalier, 4 or 5 years ago, refused to come play here because he's driving to practice in his Ferrari and flip-flops. Now in Toronto, it's not even a Canadian city anymore. Toronto could just be American and we wouldn't even care. So the market's not the same. Fans are still going out. It's all corporate.
But off camera, you lived in Toronto.
Yeah.
Off camera, you told me you've been to the ACC, and you told me that the ambiance in there and the respect that the fans have for their team is off the charts. You did say that.
I said that the ACC is electrifying.
Right.
But when the Raptors are playing.
Okay.
I go to Toronto Maple Leafs games.
No passion.
It's all suits.
Yeah.
It's all suits and guys looking at their Blackberries. The
were-
real fans
they-
are at home because tickets are $200 a piece.
The NHL players were recently polled, and they chose Toronto as being the 5th lowest ranked team of where they want to play after places like Edmonton, Buffalo, Ottawa, and I believe Winnipeg.
I don't think anybody wants to play in Winterpeg.
Winnipeg. Is there anything about the Toronto market for you that makes it easier, for a player playing versus Montreal? I mean, do you find that the media is just so difficult on
Let's
Montreal?
be honest, language barriers got to be up there,
That's
right?
true,
I
that's true.
think Montreal people are scared a bit sometimes if they don't know French. And I think that's an issue, 100%.
There's a lot of it as well when it comes down to families. These guys, a lot of them are not necessarily only selecting where to play based on what the taxes are going to be like and what the climate. It's also they're bringing a wife, they're bringing kids. And if they have to go into, in this case in Montreal, a situation where they may have to pull their kids out of English school halfway through the year, bring them to a French school, a more French environment, it's difficult. And those are factors that until you've lived here, you realize that it's completely manageable. But if you've never lived here, you just don't understand the climate that Montreal represents.
Scary.
And the other thing is the anonymity. In Toronto, Montreal, there is no anonymity, and players are not cut from the same cloth the way that they used to. Some players just they don't believe in that style of hockey anymore. They'd much rather go to Arizona,
Florida,
and go to work in flip-flops, and they can walk down the street and there's no problem whatsoever.
Look at Roberto Luongo. He did that right back to Florida, right? He knows no one's going to bother him.
Absolutely.
His life's going to be
It's
good.
a priceless asset to have. Gentlemen, it was great to have you guys on. Hopefully we can have you guys back. You guys brought a lot to the table. We love it. Where can people catch you guys in action?
I'm on weekdays 5 to 9 on the Beat 92.5. Weekdays 5 to 9.
And you can catch me on the weekend breakfast, Saturday, Sunday mornings, nice and early, 6 a.m. And we also do weddings and bar mitzvahs on the side.
There it is. A shameless plug, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for taking the time, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Stay with us. My rant is up next. You don't want to miss it.
Reid Between the Lines is brought to you by LavalCosm.com. It's ball hockey time. Reid Between the Lines is brought to you by Diadora. Available at diadora.com.
Yesterday marked the 51st anniversary of Ali knocking out Liston in the 7th round, capturing his first championship title and ushering in the golden age of boxing that spanned decades. It also coincides with the finalizing of the long-anticipated, wait for it, $250 million Pacquiao-Mayweather fight on May 2nd. Now, the news comes after years of belly aching and finger pointing between both cams over everything from money to Olympic-style blood testing. Is it a fight 5 years too late? You're damn right it is. And does it have anywhere close to the luster it once had years ago? You must be joking. But read between the lines, and you'll see that there's a silver lining within those dark clouds. And it serves as a long overdue wake-up call to the sport in shambles. Over the years, boxing popularity has crashed harder than a raver at 10 a.m. And believe me, that's really hard. Many attribute that to the growing popularity of MMA, and that's true, but that's only one part of the picture. The truth is, boxing has been plagued by a continual failure to seize the opportunities to provide its fans with the best possible product. The Pacquiao-Mayweather fight being just one example. Promoters and fighters are unable to get on the same page, and the sport is suffering as a result. You don't have to look to Las Vegas to see the sport's potential missed opportunities. You only have to look at the promising boxing industry in Montreal, for example. Take the Jean-Pascal Lucien-Boutte fight that took place last year. Sure, it was a huge draw, but can you imagine if both of those would have squared off when they were both champions at the height of their powers? That's what fans are clamoring for, seeing the best fight the best at their best. That's the boxing we know. That's the boxing we love. And that's what's hurting this wounded sport the most. So instead of getting caught up in what could have been, let's hope that promoters and pundits alike strike the iron while it's hot. Take advantage of boxing being thrusted back into the spotlight to breathe new life. And the best way to do that is to give the fans what they want. Let's give those people paying $80 per pay-per-view their money worth. Boxing might be wounded, but with a concerted effort of promoters and fighters, it can once again rise to the action and reclaim its glory. That's my take, and we invite you to step into the ring and read between the lines. Until next time, I'm Adam Reid. Thanks for being with us.
Catering services courtesy of piattorustico.com, authentic Italian cuisine. Adam Reid's wardrobe provided by Carve, available at carve.ca. Salon services powered by Glam Atelier, la maison de beauté. Guests of the Reid Between the Lines show stay at the Holiday Inn Express and Suites, Montreal Airport. Transportation services by AmbianceLimousines.com.